Welcome back. Let's talk about the state of our economy. We'll focus on the cost of living, aka inflation. In that sense, we've been joined on the program by Mr. Shoaib Idris. He's an economist and founding managing director of Timeline Consulting. He joins us virtually. Also, Dr. Titilaya Fowokon, a tax practitioner, joining us as well virtually. Gentlemen and lady, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
All right, Mr. Idris, let me start from you. First question, the MPC is supposed to come out with their numbers today in that sense. So I just want to ask a quick one. Do you think they are going to hike or hold or maybe look going dovish in that sense, marginally to ease, the interest rates? So that's the first one. And then two, I would like you to speak on what you make of the latest inflation figures. So we have seen some level of oscillation. 25, it went to 24, it's back to 23, and all of that. So marginally speaking, we're seeing what looks like a bit of stability. Well, I use the word stability, some range in that sense. What does this mean for the average person in Nigeria?
Well, in general, there is an adage that goes with good news is almost always a good news, no matter how, minute the good news may be conveying. We've had a series of, if you like, months, if not almost 2 years, that inflation has been increasing and increasing. At slightly even a faster rate, and the economy has been somewhat shrinking, largely because of some of the policies that has been initiated by the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration. And then, in the last 3-4 months, we witnessed 2 months of a receding inflationary, trend over the period. Then all of a sudden, inflation then went up again. Now, this month, we have a situation where, the numbers are giving us slightly an encouraging, kind of direction. Inflation appears to be receding, at least in the last 1 month. But then you ask yourself, when you interrogate the figures, food inflation, general inflation, you juxtapose the two, statistics, you realize that the reduction in inflation as espoused by the National Bureau of Statistics is occasioned by a slow in the increase in prices of food items, which meant food inflation went down, and by implication, it drags the general inflation figures slightly down. Then you go a step further to interrogate why did food inflation went down. In the last 3-4 months, the government took a position by allowing the importation of certain food items like grains, soybeans, sorghum, maize, and other food inflation items, now, because of that, decision by government, it so happens that the prices, local prices of the locally produced grains became slightly, challenged, and farmers and indeed traders lost money because prices went down. Now, with this kind of situation, you find yourself that food inflation had to go down. But yes, it's good news that general inflation had to go down because food inflation went down. But how good is good? Quite a number of Nigerians are losing money arising from this, if you like, quote and unquote, the inflationary pressure receding, because it's not receding out of, certain fundamental economic policies implemented by government. No, it's kind of a mumbo-jumbo approach, a policy somersault. The government is saying Nigeria first, the same government is also allowing a group of companies to be importing grains when these grains are available in Nigeria. And then you ask yourself, where are we heading to? Must we force inflation to come down? Must we not look at other economic, parameters or policies or actions that we need to take so that we can tame inflation and Nigeria's cost of living will be slightly, at least, manageable?
Is to taper inflation, but it hasn't been as effective as it should be. It moved a bit of the needle slightly, but let's remember that this is a rebased CPI, so let's not get too excited in that sense because the real test has not come. Titilayo, so let's talk about some of maybe you take piggyback on some of the things you said, but primarily, what kind of policy direction should we be looking at to help drastically aggressively reduce inflation, especially when it comes to food and the cost of living? He's mentioned some importation policy. I don't think that was even effective in any shape or form because we've asked those questions. There was a timeline. They even started late. It was close to ineffective. So I don't even want to go there in terms of those policies of government to bring in grains and all of that. Titilayo.
Okay, good morning. I would like to take it from where my distinguished stopped. And that is to look at how did we get to where we are? Because we've spoken about the inflation trying to stabilize. We've also mentioned the fact that rebasing happened. So if we look at it in the real sense of it, do we really have a reduction in inflation? We're talking about policy. We still struggle with food. I'm looking at the inflation rate as at now. Food inflation is over almost 90% of what we're talking about. And if you also look at the basic needs of man, if you take away food, shelter, clothing, you've actually met the major ones. So if we're still having this, then government should be looking at how do we make sure that we can raise our food production within the country. Importation may not be the solution because remember that importation still has to do with the exchange rate. And we're still struggling with stabilizing the naira. So if you're now talking about importing, now with the price of what we import be the same as the price of what we are able to produce locally, is definitely not going to be the same. So as far as I'm concerned, when we're talking about policy, we should be looking about how do we make sure that there is sufficiency of food. I want to say that part of the good news is that we are having some stability around insecurity. The issues we are having in some of the states in the country is easing down. And if we can be able to get the farmers back to the farm, when we talk of grains, why should we import grains? When we have a tropical environment where these grains can grow and at a lower cost to us. Importation will put pressure on the exchange rate. It will not give us the best of what we expect to have. So I think government should be looking at area of agricultural subsidies so that we can encourage those who are farming to be able to farm more. And there should also be how to get those produce to the market. Because when we are able to put lower pressure on food, then we can actually meet the need of the ordinary man. Once there is hunger, there will be a lot of things that will follow it. Government should be looking at how do we get the food to be surplus and how do we get the food to the people that needs to use this food. Once we are able to bring that, because looking at it, food inflation is about 21% as of April, out of 23-point-something% of the all index inflation rates. So if we are able to deal with the area of food, then we'll be able to do a lot in terms of bringing down the inflation rate. We know what happened in terms of the fuel cost. We know what happened in terms of transportation. By the time we add the impact of all this into it, we want to just thank God that these things are stabilizing. With respect to fuel prices, it's somewhat stable, but it could be better. So when we get some of these indices that determines how the inflation rate, when we are able to get them under control, then we will be able to bring down things. There's quite a lot of issues around the standard of living of people. The more you have the increase in prices, the less what you can get with the money you have. And this is the crux of the matter. So I want to believe that government will be looking into how do we make sure that the naira is stabilized. Government will be looking into how do we make sure that the agricultural produce is locally generated, is not something locally produced, rather than we importing and putting more strain on the naira through the foreign exchange.
All right, let's look at it from the external influences and what could happen in the near future now. We know that crude oil prices are lowering, unprecedented, in an unprecedented manner. And lower crude oil prices mean lower revenue for the government. But what does this mean for inflation in the long term?
Okay, when we talk about lower crude oil prices, which means lower revenue for the government, the impact will still be on production, and this means on the long term we need to look at how things are going. Now, if we are able to bring down cost of production, then that means we are able to also make sure that people are able to afford it, and this will make the inflation rate to go lower. So government would have to look at and I would also want to say that we are moving away from reliance on oil, and that's diversification. This is another area which I believe will help us to be able to stabilize in terms of the inflation rate. So crude oil prices go down, fine. We are able to get, we should be able to get refined petroleum products at a cheaper rate, and that brings down other costs. And when we are able to have other costs coming down, it means that the cost of production comes down. It means that we expect also, on the long run, the prices of things to come down, and that reduces the pressure. Now, that will also have some effect on cost of borrowing, which all dovetails into what determines the prices at which we buy things in the market. And that is where the impact.
Well, there are just some days you get that unexpected call and it just bumps in, but not to worry, that will be sorted out and we'll reconnect with our guests on the program. Dr. Falcon was speaking to Bukala's question around the drop in the price of crude in the international market and its effect on Nigeria's budget. I know there had been questions around whether that was sustainable or not. So let's just naturally take this to Mr. Shaibu Idris. Same question regarding Nigeria's major money maker, that's crude oil, and what is happening to it right now. You see some of the Gulf nations thinking post-oil, right? They're already thinking about a world where there is no oil, or where oil is no more as valuable as it used to be. So they're making investments in other climes. But Nigeria finds itself in a situation where it needs to think short-term first before it begins to think even long-term in that sense, because there's a pressing challenge of poverty, hunger, rising cost of living. So which is the most prudent way for Nigeria to manage the short-term problems and also still keep its eyes on the fast-changing global trends?
I think, my brother, the country and indeed the government has never been in short of information and pieces of advice as to what is the best way to manage this economy. The Nigerian Economic Summit Group, Corporate Nigeria, the World Bank, the IMF, and quite a number of other well-meaning Nigerians have given this government and indeed successive administration ways and means of managing the economy for the betterment of average Nigerian. Number one, we're talking of diversification. My dear sister has alluded to the fact that we are supposed to be working towards diversifying the Nigerian economy so that we don't just continue to be monolithic in terms of our, foreign exchange earnings. Imagine where we are today. The budget of this year has been benchmarked at $75 per barrel, of crude oil. Where is the price today? That is a big and serious issue for us as Nigerians, because what might happen is there will be lower dollar supply to the economy. With lower dollars, it will mean devaluation. With devaluation, it will mean increase in pricing. Now, have we been able to successfully work towards diversification of this economy? For more than 30 years, more than 40 years, we've been talking about diversification, but there has not been much of action beyond the rhetoric. Number two, cost of governance. Yeah, look at the Steve Orosenya report. How old has that report been? How many, agencies of government do we have when Orosenya was having that report? And yet, this government came in, President Tinubu said, I will implement Orosenya report. What did we see? Instead of about 600, 700 parastatal of government, Tinubu has expanded the parastatal to almost 1,200. Are we implementing Orosenya report, or is it talk, and talk is cheap without action? So as long as we don't manage the cost of governance, we will continue to have issues, and this is how we will continue to possibly, if you like, run down our economy. We can do much better than what we are doing. We have the capacity, we have the human capital, we have the knowledge, we have the people, and we have the wherewithal to run this economy in a better and more, austere measures. Imagine the retinue of political appointees Mr. President has today. Is it showing us that there is need for austerity? Imagine the items of purchases, the renovation going on, the buildings going on for executives. Is that an indication of there is need for austerity? Imagine what the members of the National Assembly are doing and purchasing of this and that and that. We are never, a bit of serious people. We talk and talk and talk, and we never walk the talk. We don't implement what we speak about. And I think there is need for everybody in government to begin to have a second thought as to what do we need to do in order to get out the level of doldrums where the economy is currently.
All right. Ms. Idris, let's stay with you for a moment before we take you to Titilayo. And let's talk about the impact of the new policy of government. I know you've mentioned it in passing, but some are celebrating it to the effect that it may positively impact manufacturing sector, given the fact that Nigeria First policy is supposed to look inwards first, and if it doesn't find what it needs here, then there'll be a waiver for any form of import, and that covers goods and services. How far-reaching do you think this policy can go in revitalizing the service and manufacturing sector in that sense to impact on the general figures of inflation in the country?
Thank you very much for that question. You see, what we expect to see really is Mr. President to send a bill to the National Assembly to make it mandatory, not just the federal government, but also the state government, the local government, and indeed the private sector to, by way of law, to be compelled to implement the Nigeria First policy. And this Nigeria First policy shouldn't be just in terms of purchases. Let it be in terms of employment opportunities. Why do you see, and why should we be seeing a company operating in Nigeria recruiting an Asian to be head of human resources or head of marketing or chief finance officer when we have more than sufficient number of qualified Nigerians? Why should we be patronizing foreign companies in terms of implementation of construction of roads, houses, and other infrastructure? So this Nigeria First policy is one of the best intentions, one of the best policies of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, but it needs to be codified, it needs to be espoused, and it needs to be made mandatory, not just to the federal government employees or agencies, but also to the state, the local government, as well as corporate Nigeria. And indeed, the window that they gave, that, there could be exception. Yes, we are not saying that there shouldn't be exception, but that exception clause should be expunged, because it's a window of opportunity for, miscreant, for people who might not be patriotic or nationalistic to be making money at the expense of Nigeria. As long as we are able to implement this Nigeria First policy to the letter, the economy will certainly improve. It will serve as catalyst to investors coming in to set up companies in Nigeria, be them car assembly plants, other, technology-driven assembly plant, even the manufacturing. We are in a situation where companies like Dunlop, companies like Michelin, who were producing tires, have left Nigeria. We are experiencing a situation where close to about 5,000 micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises have closed shop, largely because of the challenges of either low demand or electricity supply or other challenges. But we have to compel our people and Nigerians to patronize made in Nigeria, be it in terms of clothing, in terms of shoes that we wear, in every aspect, in every facet. Why should we, for example, be importing powdered milk? Isn't it a shame? Imagine we had a situation where in the last 35 years that Nigeria was a net importer of cement. When President Olusegun Obasanjo made it a duty that we must be exporter of cement within a maximum period of 15 years, where are we today? Because of doggedness of the implementation of that policy, today Nigeria is a net exporter of cement. Why should we be importing wheat, for example? Why should we be importing sugar when we are a country that has this much of almost 1 million square kilometer of land mass, 80% of it arable land, and yet we cannot even feed ourselves, and we are importing grains and other products or produce? I think it is only fair that we have a government that will doggedly follow our policies of Nigeria First, so that we can be self-sufficient in not just food production, but in several other items.
Mr. Shaibu Idris, we must thank you for your thoughts, for coming on the program as well. He's an economist, a founder, managing director of Timeline Consulting, joining us virtually. Also, Dr. Titilayo Fowokon, tax practitioner. I couldn't get our thoughts in as much as possible because of the network. But thank you so much, gentleman and lady, for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we will be switching gears to talk about something that has to do with leadership. And joining us all the way from outside the country in Berlin will be Lunia Hara, right here on the program.